right.
Feels good to be in the flight suit.
Oh boy, you guys look great.
Welcome, astronauts, to Launch Site 1 and welcome to the Astronaut Training Center. This capsule is the RTS Tortoise. It is a full-scale mock-up. How you guys feeling?
I have
Good.
I literally have had goosebumps since I stepped in. Like, they haven't gone away.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, along with his crew there, preparing to go to space tomorrow. Jeff Bezos, of course, carrying out his childhood dream, traveling to the edge of space aboard Blue Origin's New Shepard tomorrow with 3 other crew members. They're going to be making history in the process with the youngest and oldest passengers aboard to travel to space, along with Bezos' brother. For more on the journey, let's bring in Dylan Taylor, Voyager Space Chairman and CEO. And Dylan, we should point out, you've got a lot of eyes on this one, largely because you're one of the most active private space investors. So much of this has been sort of, there's a lot of cynicism going into this, let's say. A lot of talk about these billionaires that are traveling when so much of these trips are not accessible to sort of the everyday person. How are you viewing what's about to play out tomorrow?
Yeah, I see it differently.
As you might expect. I mean, I think, look, we live in a world that's a little off kilter, I think it's safe to say. And my view is we lack inspiration, we lack vision, we lack hope. And if space isn't the most visionary, inspirational, hopeful thing that we have as a human activity, I don't know what is. So I think, looking at Jeff and Richard and other people who have been uber successful, kind of live their best life and go live out their dreams. I mean, I don't know what more we could do to inspire young people to reach for the stars. I mean, literally and figuratively. So I understand we have an income inequality debate, raging in the US and elsewhere. I think it's an important debate to have, but to me, to attach it to the space race is misguided.
From an inspiration perspective, I guess it's always been interesting to watch it play out in kind of the way that space travel, maybe hasn't looked as realistic to a lot of people as, it had in the past. And kind of with SpaceX and the excitement that company created around it was more focused on, kind of the enterprise side of the business. I mean, you're an investor in the space. What to you maybe has changed over the last few years, and especially now over the last few weeks, as we saw Richard Branson go up, now Jeff Bezos, around maybe shifting away from maybe some of those enterprise-focused companies to now just on space travel? I mean, what does the investing landscape look like now as the future kind of unfolds?
Well, I think more retail investors
Will get involved in space. I think there'll be more opportunities for that. But you asked what changed. It was rocket reusability is what's changed. The fact that we can rapidly reuse booster rockets not only has unlocked our ability to get satellites to orbit, and this has been the massive success SpaceX has had, but it also has cracked the code on space tourism, because the ability to reuse the booster rocket in the case of Blue Origin is what's going to bring that ticket price way down from hundreds of thousands of dollars to eventually probably the cost of a really nice vacation. So I think that's really what's changed. And I think as more retail investors get involved, we'll have more opportunities for those investors, not only to invest, but to participate in space, maybe even go to space themselves or know people who go to space. So I think space will be a narrative that's increasing in the retail investor's mind. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's an inspirational, motivational thing.
Beyond space tourism, though, what exactly do these dueling missions mean for space exploration? I mean, going beyond the spectacle of Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos going to the edge of space,
right.
What are the other tangible benefits that you see in terms of the overall space?
Well, I think it's going to be about destinations. So once you're on a path, once we've sort of cracked suborbital rockets and going to the edge of space, it's going to be about where do we go to next. So this will be private space stations. This will be things like the moon eventually, and even Mars and deep space. So I think if the last 10 years was about building access to space and rocket reusability, I think the next 10 years will be about destinations. And then certainly when it comes to ones and zeros, so constellations going up, hardware and satellites in orbit, that's a huge narrative for space investment. We only downlink about 6% of the data we generate in space. So as we build systems to get more data down, and marry that with things like AI, machine learning, and predictive analytics, I think there'll be massive value created here on Earth for global commerce based upon space-based data. So those are two themes, destinations and space-based data, that I think will really set the stage for investment going forward.
And Dylan, just to bring it back to what we're going to be seeing tomorrow play out, I mean, obviously it was a long road for Blue Origin to get here, long road for Jeff Bezos, had to step up kind of the investment to get the company maybe caught back up closer to what SpaceX has been able to do. And then, of course, had Richard Branson, to a certain degree, steal the thunder by swooping in and getting up there early. I mean, what do you make of the strides that Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin have been able to make as of late to try and close the gap there with SpaceX, and how much more money you think it's going to take for them to keep building on what they're going to accomplish tomorrow?
Well, I think Jeff is very ambitious. So he's thinking about infrastructure in space, millions of people living and working in space. But Jeff is also very much a measure twice, cut once person. That's the way he built Amazon. Slow and steady wins the race. If you look at Amazon, it was all about building logistics. And once they had cracked the logistics supply chain issue, then they had superior scale, and that's when they overtook Walmart and Costco and everybody else. So I think space will be very similar. I think he's playing the long game. I think he's focused on heavy lift rockets. He's focused on space-based infrastructure, and he happens to be the richest guy in the world as well. So that always helps. So I wouldn't bet against Jeff.
Dylan, in many ways, what we're seeing play out this month is kind of the culmination of the sea change we've seen in space investment, with the government agencies, particularly NASA, really getting a pullback in funding, and then the private side taking the leadership on that front. Is that going to continue to drive space exploration moving forward? Or you think, on the government, with NASA, for example, the federal government sees what's happening on the private side and say, well, maybe we need to beef up our investments on this side too?
Yeah, I think the government will continue to be a major customer, not only the US, but other space agencies around the world. But even within the US government, it's primarily Department of Defense that's really spending the real money. NASA has resources, of course, but the whole theme, rise of China, hypersonics, that's really driving a lot of the space-based investment. And then, as you alluded to, commercial space. So these are private companies doing business with other private companies. That's probably the fastest growing segment of the market. So as these high growth companies raise money, they need to deploy that to build capability and to hire other companies to do work for them. So that's a big part of the ecosystem going forward.